Happy Monday and welcome back to the Pybites YouTube channel. Today I ran into an issue running an Heroku management command, and that gave me actually a really nice opportunity to debug the problem locally by first setting up the data as it's in production, and then use the debugger to look at what's going on and ultimately fix the issue. So yeah, really interesting use case, and I hope it shows you the power of the debugger and shows you part of my workflow, how I debug problems. So let's dive straight in. Let's look at a practical example of debugging. So this morning I ran my task to send a new article, the podcast with Charles, but it failed. It's showing the error. Pybob could not be emailed, exception value too long for type character varying 100. So I know this is a model database error from experience, but let's debug it a little bit. So let's look at the code base where this might happen. And this is the send article Django command. Now, before even starting to debug, I had to set up the same data. So I went into my article model database table and set up the same article I have in production, because the new articles from the blog are synced over via a cron job. So what I didn't show and what I did do is make that same entry in the database. So I'm working with the same data. So let's go into this script and specifically to line 80, where I'm already are more or less. So I hit this exception. So something in this try block went wrong, right? Now, I don't think a message replace went wrong, nor this stuff. So it's somewhere in the send message as Pybites where this went wrong. So at this point, what I often do is use the breakpoint. That's new since 3.7. Before Python 3.7, you had to do import pdb set trace, which is still valid, but why complicate it if you can use this simpler way, the now built-in, and which you can also actually set another Python debugger as an environment variable, I believe. So you have more control. But anyway, also easier to type, right? So instead of now running this against Heroku, as I have now the same data locally, I'm going to reproduce this issue locally, but now with a breakpoint to pause the code execution right before the issue starts. So here you go. It did not crash. Otherwise, I would not have gotten to this breakpoint. And this is actually a function, right? So I can use the S or step to step into that function. So now I'm in that function and I can use N or next to step through the lines. So I used N once, so actually don't see that moving. But it does move through the code right now. So sender is now set, receiver is now set, and those are two users on the platform. And then it tries to make a thread object. So we have a thread object that still went fine. So you see the article I'm actually wanting to push out. But then on the thread.save, and by the way, this is not Python threads, right? This is the thread model, which makes a message thread object on the platform. Now, when I execute thread.save, we get this same error. So a little bit more informative, though. I also get the actual exception. So I was really puzzled about this because the original, the article object, let me show that. This is also a good point. When you're at the debugger, you can just run any Python code. So apart from pausing the execution, you can look at other objects and run code. So it's very powerful. This is not the one I wanted. This is the object I'm actually pulled into the Django management command script. And I was actually a bit puzzled because the title here is only 75 characters. And if I look at the thread model has these fields. By the way, I learned this today. You can use on a Django model, you can use underscore meta fields, and then you can interrogate the fields. And I can use dir on the variable to see what I can do. And there was, I think, a max length. So I can run this again. And I can effectively see that all these fields don't really have a max length, but the title has. So I was puzzled because the article object I'm working with has a title of 75, yet the database model supports up until 100. So what's going on here, right? Well, if I look at the thread model, instance creation, I can now, thanks to the debugger, inspect what I'm getting. So sender and receiver is fine. Those are user objects, but the subject is actually mutated in this script. So instead of from 0 to 1, it prepended a new Pybites podcast episode to it. So what I'm passing into the thread model is a title of 104 characters long, and that's too much, and that's the root of the issue. Now, if I would just have gazed at Heroku or would have made guesses, I would not have gone anywhere with this. But the lesson is reproduce it locally and use the debugger to inspect exactly around the problem what's happening. And then you get to some amazing insight. So what I need to do is, and I can actually test this here, right? I could make the subject shorter. So I can say subject equals anything that's shorter, just for a test right now. It's a local database, so I can just clean out anything, right? And if I now, so I overwrite the subject to something that's 50 characters. And just to confirm that works, if I would try this again, now it works. It doesn't crash anymore. So now making the fix is trivial. I just need to make sure that I shorten the title in the database, basically a data issue. But yeah, again, the debugger made this very insightful. So that's a wrap. Hope this helps you understand the power of debugging and this practical example, how the debugger, PDB, or any other is really a power tool, and it seriously saves you time and makes you a more effective developer. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow we'll be back with a new video. Cheers.